With the upcoming release date of the third season of Beastars, I thought it would be fun to go back over the first season and talk about an aspect of it that I didn't really see discussed that often, as well as showing how this can inspire future anime to do something similar. I don't really tend to go out of my way to watch a new series, even based on incredibly positive recommendations. I've watched my fair share of some of the big boys such as Death Note, Dragon Ball, Code Geass, Fullmetal Alchemist and Cowboy Bebop. So it was by a stroke of luck that, based on a referral by this man, that I sat down to watch this Netflix anime called Beastars. I'd never read the manga source material or heard of the franchise before this recommendation, so I had no idea what to expect from this series. I was pleasantly surprised to find a narrative not only rich in thematic complexity, but with fun and interesting characters. The series also had the competency and imagination to express these ideas in visually stimulating ways. In my experience, cinematography isn't an area in which I feel most modern anime places a great deal of thought. Most scenes use basic coverage like shot reverse shot and rely on the performances of the actors and the animation to provide the storytelling. I feel like this is a bit of a waste considering anime's place as a visual medium and its varied use in the filmographies of many Japanese animation auteurs such as Satoshi Kon and Hayao Miyazaki. In this video, I'll be going over some of the more interesting cinematography in the first 2 episodes of Beastars, and then discussing how I find they reveal aspects of the featured characters' personalities. I'll only be using the first 2 episodes of the series, as some of these techniques are repeated throughout the other instalments and I don't want this video to become too overly dense. Also, it should go without saying, but this video is just covering my own thoughts and opinions. If you have different interpretations, then I would love to see those in the comment section or even in other people's videos. As a final disclaimer, I may mention events and dialogue from later episodes or chapters in the manga, so this is your obligatory spoiler warning and my recommendation that you actually go and watch Beastars before continuing this video. Now that we've covered everything, let's put on our Cherryton uniforms, inhale some rabbit blood to enhance our performance and become the next Beastar. So for the first 4 minutes of the episode, we don't get anything too remarkable. Our first 2 scenes are mostly exposition to set up the murder that begins the story. This naturally reveals the divide between herbivores and carnivores that lies at the heart of the narrative, though it's also hammered home with some incredibly clunky dialogue.
I bet a carnivore student was responsible.
Well, we can't be sure it was a student.
But it's pretty obvious it was a carnivore.
In these first scenes, our protagonist Legoshi is only mentioned passively and seen partially in the background of scene 2. Scene 3 is where he's shown to us for the first time, but in quite an unusual way. We start with this high angle shot which showcases a noticeable distance between these 2 characters here and Legoshi on the left. Legoshi rooting through the locker is foreshadowing with something he does later, but it also highlights his emotional separation from his other peers, which although he vocalises this later, it's being shown to us visually here.
But it's just not fair to you.
It wouldn't really change anyone's opinion anyways. I'll be just fine. Feared and hated. That's the story of my life.
The next shot is a mid, which pulls out to allow Legoshi to fully enter the frame by using the reflection of the mirror. In my opinion, I feel that this is a first glimpse into his introverted nature. While throughout the series we often hear Legoshi's inner monologue, it's not very flattering to himself, and reveals a deep problem with his self-image which I believe to be indicated here by the camera's insistence on framing him behind these 2 other characters, who also don't acknowledge him until he leaves. In the next scene, which devotes much of its time to again visualising and talking about the divide between the species, we get another couple of shots showing Legoshi divided from the other characters on the ground. Then after the herbivore characters finish talking about their fear of Legoshi, we get a POV low angle shot from this female alpaca's perspective, making Legoshi look powerful and intimidating, which is likewise done a number of times throughout the series and even again in this episode. This is usually done towards him by characters who are smaller and don't really know Legoshi yet, showcasing their internalised prejudices. Then the shot is reversed from what I presume to be Legoshi's perspective, showing how fearful the alpaca feels, which is considerably more effective than strictly being told it, and it feels very Hitchcockian in its approach. The next shot I want to bring attention to is this one, after Legoshi has given Els the alpaca the love letter from Tem. I think the use of lighting here is very inspired, and there's a noticeable division of space between the light and dark side of the frame. As if entering the light in Elle's perspective, Legacy has literally highlighted his gentle nature and immediately changed her perspective with his kind actions and words. In the next shot, however, we see that despite what he's done, he still has that internalised doubt, and we're shown Legacy sitting at quite a distance away within the frame. After their conversation, Legacy skulks away back into the dark with the camera tracking him. From this point on in the narrative, we now follow Legacy, and as mentioned previously, we're privy to his thoughts and feelings. While this moment is quite depressing, it does a spectacular job of showing how tight camera work can make beats in the story more efficient. We're under 10 minutes into this episode, and without much dialogue from him, we understand a great deal about Legacy, how he views himself, and how the other characters view him and his species. I think now is an ideal time to move on to scenes featuring our other main character, Haru, the white dwarf rabbit. Haru is introduced similarly to Legacy in that her appearance is built up to rather than shown straight away. Haru's possessions are dropped from above with no warning, interrupting her watering the flowers, in a sense punishing Haru for her kind nature, which is a belief she expresses towards the end of the season, now foreshadowed here. I feel it's also a reference to her idea that she has no control in her life, and these kinds of unfortunate moments just kind of happen to her. A high angle at the end of the scene punctuates this feeling, but also showcases Haru not even looking up at them in response, signifying that this didn't really bother her, because as we learn later, it's not the first time. Just like with Legacy, this is incredibly economic visual storytelling, setting up another main character with barely a word spoken. We're going to jump ahead now a few scenes to get to our first real moment with the final main character, Louis the Red Deer. Through Legacy's inner monologue, we're told how popular this character is and how his destiny as the future Beastar is fairly secured.
His gestures, his voice, and his gaze. He must have it all down. Of course he does. It's Louis. He's only a year older than me, and he's the lead actor and pretty much runs the school.
But here is where we get a more solid glimpse into his actual personality. As he and this other animal go over the lines of the play that will be performed later in the season, we see that Louis absolutely dominates his side of the frame with his antlers cut off by the top, which gives the impression of him being this larger than life presence. As the shot continues, we track in as he grabs the goat by the face and intimidates him to learn his lines properly. Seeing both of these perspectives I feel makes the scene more powerful, as these close-ups secure Louis' power over his fellow students and tell us more about his place within the world that's still being set up. The next shot is the one mentioned previously, with Legacy's reaction being shown to us by the mirror on the wall. This particular shot and the cut that brings it in reminds me a lot of the cinematography in David Fincher's Panic Room, which itself used a number of small cuts and cinematography to showcase how power dynamics change within a conversation.
Or have you forgotten why you're here? So let's just quit dicking around, okay, and get this over with. Kill the phones.
The last shot for this episode I would like to highlight is this split screen effect used when Louis is reprimanding Legacy for not embracing his wolf nature. Having both action and reaction in their conversation turns what could be a simple shot reverse shot into something a lot more visually interesting. This episode picks up immediately after the events of the first, with Legacy losing control of his inhibitions and attacking Haru with the intent of eating her. As Legacy wrestles with his conscience and the feelings of desire, or his id and superego, we get this interesting frame. This is a visual that's used several times throughout the series during moments of intense monologuing. It's an effective way of replicating the intents of panels from the manga without making it feel quite as static as those panels. Small movements that were images from the comic are now integrated into the montage that's on the screen, highlighting these little moments, but not taking too much time to have them be individual frames. After Haru runs away and Legacy is told that Louis injured himself during rehearsals of the Adler play, we get this shot. This is a neat summation of everything Louis fears about himself and others. That he'll always be viewed as weak because of the species he was born as, which contrasts him to Legacy, who has been established in previous scenes to shy away from his nature. This is where Louis' arc for the season starts, as he begins to resent his own perceived weakness and seeks a way to feel powerful in a world where he's prey to carnivores like Legacy. Jumping forward to the tracking shot showcasing the rehearsals of the Adler play. The way the play is acted out here as if it were real showcases Louis' own obsession with perfection when it comes to this play. because this is a scenario where he can actually exert some control over his own character and the world around him, so it's not a surprise to see it feel so real to him. I think this also speaks to the inherent melodrama within the narrative of Beastars, so the intentional blending between what's not real on the stage versus how they speak and act in the real world. As Louis goes on to talk about the symbolism in the play, we get a simple visual metaphor here with Louis literally standing as the centre of attention, with Legoshi pushed down into the foreground as an observer, very much an indication of their relationship at this early point in the show. The next shot I want to highlight is this shot reminiscent of the first one I brought up in this episode, but this time Legoshi's face is used as the frame in which the action is taking place. This framing reveals Haru and Legoshi to be opposites who obviously come to attract. Next is a similar shot with similar intentions, but this time Haru is noticeably standing closer to Legoshi than previously. I think this is a subtle way of showing their growing closeness, which reaches a strange plateau at the end of this episode. Legoshi also talks over his conversation with Haru with his inner monologue, which is an interesting use of sound as it highlights his social anxiety and crippling self-awareness of everything that he says. The penultimate shot we'll be looking at today is the next in a collection of this little frame within frame effect, but now features Haru at the centre of the frame. Not only does this adhere to the rule of 3 in editing, but this also works as foreshadowing to how important Haru eventually comes to be to Legoshi. It's also noticeable how in each of these shots that I've discussed he faces in a slightly different direction, which not only highlights his confused nature by breaking the 180 rule, but also could be an indication of his respect towards Haru. His eyes are level with hers, despite Legoshi towering over her. This is something that Haru brings up later about Legoshi and why she enjoys his company so much, because he always makes an effort to never look down on her. The next shot is the same composition-wise as the others, but instead of featuring footage, it's a collage of photos of the two of them performing the task that Haru just asked Legoshi to do, which has a twofold effect. This collage is the next step in his affection for her, with Haru's image literally bleeding over the edges of what was ostensibly Legoshi's mind. I think this shows us his deep feelings before even he is aware of them. The other function is filling the audience in just what the characters are up to during the two scenes, because there was a short time skip between them. I think that just about covers what I had to say regarding Beastars' use of shot composition, which to me makes the story and narrative so much more digestible and interesting because a variety of techniques are being used to bring this world and its characters to life. I think the show benefits so much from this, not just because it helps us to understand how these characters feel about each other, but also lets us understand their environment way more than if it were simply explained in dialogue. Which, I'll be honest, Beastars does occasionally fall victim to this and seems to lose confidence in an audience's ability to comprehend much more complex ideas. But when it works unbelievably well and helps people to understand what's going on in a fulfilling way. I just hope I can find another anime that does it as well as this. If you liked what you saw, then I'd appreciate if you consider pledging to my Patreon page. I'm endeavouring to keep this channel ad-free, but to make that possible I'm going to need some support. Thank you very much if you got to the end of this video. I had a lot of fun working on this, so I don't think it will be my only one. If you've got any recommendations of other shows like this, or a suggestion for a topic, then leave it below and I'll try to get to it when possible. I'll see you in the next video.